And these are just examples of how Singapore is connected to the rest of the world. If you want to actually fly around Singapore, fly around Asia, fly around Southeast Asia, I believe that you can actually access everything within 3 to 5 hours flight. And we are a great place to live, many good international schools, very safe environment. You can be walking around at night in the evenings without fear. You can be enjoying the local food even at late nights, right? And we are, most importantly, a trusted partner for you. Okay, next slide. I would now explain a little bit about the key growth and transformation areas that we have in Singapore. And a lot of it is centered around innovation, technology creation, harnessing as well the digital push all over the world. As you can see, some of the statistics in this slide, we are second in Asia for innovation, top in Asia for digital transformation and digital infrastructure. Actually, Singapore's digital economy forms 17% of our economy. We are also very strong in advanced manufacturing, hub services, supply chains, electronics, aerospace, energy, chemicals, and marine and offshore. You can imagine a lot of these are also adjacent industries that intersect closely with the space sector. All right, next slide, please. And as a global business city, we remain attractive to both businesses and individuals. I mentioned some anecdotes earlier, but over here, there are some accolades. Given that Singapore is the #1 most competitive economy in the world, ranked by IMD, World Competitiveness Ranking, #1 most innovative intellectual property office globally. We protect your IP and all IP that's based here, and our rankings show for itself. We are also digitally competitive, focused on sustainability, strong in talent development and attraction, and also very strong in innovation. Next slide. More than just Singapore, we are actually part of a very fast-growing region known as Asia and Southeast Asia. All right, we are at the heart of Southeast Asia, which is already the 5th largest economy in the world when you see us as a region. Sorry, can you go back to the slide? We have a global GDP of $3.2 trillion, US trillion, and it's fast-growing and forecasted to be the 4th largest economy by 2030, growing at a rate of 4% a year over the next 10 years. Because of the favorable demographics, i.e. there is a growing middle class, increasing urbanization, and hence this market is a right market for many businesses, especially your businesses, to tap on. Okay, and the space industry, we foresee to grow in tandem with the growing markets in Southeast Asia. Okay, next slide. This is the slide that actually I described a little bit earlier, but this paints 1,000 words that you can actually fly pretty much to all parts of Southeast Asia within 3 to 4 hours, and the wider part of Asia Pacific within 5 to 6 hours. It is very well connected, very safe, very reliable networks of aviation connections. We have also a very strong network of free trade agreements and digital cooperation agreements that allow your businesses to tap on this region. Beyond just Singapore, we also have the Singapore Plus model, meaning that we actually team up with our immediate neighbors, Johor Bahru, which is part of the southern part of Malaysia and just north of Singapore, a 30 minutes drive across the causeway. We also team up with the Rail Islands, the Rail Islands that is south of Singapore, within an hour of ferry, a boat ride. And these regions actually form the Singapore Plus model, whereby you can tap on the talent pool, lower cost talent in the region, larger land areas, as well as bigger networks and cost-effective manufacturing options in the region. We also have a strong alliance in terms of manufacturing with the Southeast Asia Manufacturing Alliance, as well as access to digital and technology solutions in the region, such as the Nongsa Digital Park that is in Batam. Okay, next slide. Singapore has also been a trusted innovation partner for global businesses. As you can see here, it's because firstly, the government has a very strong commitment to growing the innovation-led economy. A lot of money is being spent in research, innovation, and enterprise. 25 billion Sing dollars. And that also contributes to the space sector, whereby we have a $150 million grant that we actually focus on space technologies. We have also a very vibrant innovation ecosystem with over 3,800 technology startups, 220 venture capital. We are known as the Silicon Valley of the East, with that number of VCs, as well as many incubators and accelerators and venture funding. We are also globally connected, as mentioned earlier, with partnerships all over the region to actually launch innovations and startups. And we have many talent employed in R&D related roles. Okay, next slide. Now I'll start describing a little bit more about our space ecosystem because we are doing a bit of a deep dive, a zoom in here. And we understand that for many companies coming into a new market or region, it is challenging, it is a bit scary sometimes. But what makes it a lot easier is doing it with partners. And we are here as your partner to support your business growing to Singapore and the region. Okay, next slide. Firstly, about Singapore's ecosystem, we want to show you through this slide that actually we are well connected with the entire ecosystem between the private sector, the public sector, which includes research institution and tech transfer offices, TTOs we call it. We are well connected with the whole government networks in the middle, with various ministries that use space technologies that also procure that. We are also well connected with growth and investment partners below, both private and public capital. Okay, next slide. And you might hear my kid in the background. Sorry, it's in the evening time where my kids are coming back. Don't mind that. This is a snapshot of Singapore's space industry today. Described in the video, we have over 2,000 professionals. We are growing fast with researchers as well. More than 60 local and international companies. Half of that number are actually foreign, non-Singapore companies. And they are based in Singapore for various reasons, such as their regional headquarters, as well as sales officers and beyond. R&D as well. Now, we want to show you through this slide that basically our space sector covers the entire value chain, including from the upstream, where you have spacecraft and subsystems, launcher, manufacturing and services, as well as ground segments, satellite operators, and value-added service providers. Okay, next slide. This slide shows the number of satellites that we have to date. Basically, we have built and launched over 30 satellites, and we have more than 50 in the pipeline. Next slide. We also have a strong partnership with our research institutions. You can see on the slide here, we have Nanyang Technological University, National University of Singapore, and A-Star. Can I pause on the slide a little bit here? Okay, next slide, please. All right, I got my trusted water bottle. I'm sorry for the short interruption there. So our key areas for space applications are shown in this slide. We focus on aviation sector, maritime sector, as well as the sustainability and environment sectors. Under the aviation side, we see space as enabling technology to help build our next generation air traffic management capabilities through providing resilient and reliable VHF, very high frequency comms that is space-based. There is anti-jam, anti-spoof, ADS-B as well. And that allows us to also optimize ATC capacity, air traffic control capacity, and improve safety and aviation efficiency. On the maritime front, we see the VHF, very high frequency data exchange system, satellite connectivity for e-navigation. It's going to help make our ports more efficient. Already, Singapore is the #1 transshipment hub in terms of volume in the world. And we see space technology, satellite connectivity to help make that even more efficient through providing a comprehensive maritime situational awareness of all the traffic that comes in and out, helps to smoothen the maritime flow of traffic coming into Singapore, so there's less congestion, increasing throughput, and enhancing port connectivity and efficiency through smart ports, smart shipping, and autonomous vessel solutions. On the sustainability environment, we see that space technologies are a very important factor that helps us understand climate change. We know that more than 50% of climate change variables can only be measured from space. Singapore is also developing ourselves to be a carbon credit trading hub, basically providing solutions for carbon measurement, reporting, and verification. Using space technology will be a very critical factor, because through space, LiDAR, SAR technology, synthetic aperture radar technology, that allows us to measure more accurately and be able to verify carbon credits much more accurately, helping to solve the big problem in space, in climate change, which is how reliable are the climate green credits right now. All right, next slide, please. And we are also very interested in emerging technologies, emerging areas, such as you can see here, space robotics, in-space manufacturing, comms in space between satellites and even interplanetary comms, and space services, i.e. the professional services, law, policy, finance, as well as situational awareness and traffic control. These are areas that Austin is seeding investments in, and we look forward to working with partners to develop this. Next slide, please. I'd like to just use this slide, pause here a little bit. Feel free to visit our website at space.gov.sg. You can scan the QR codes here. Keep in touch with us. We are on LinkedIn as well. And you can also add me personally on LinkedIn. You can just search my name, Ronald Tong. And we're happy to keep in touch. And please do ask us any questions, even in this session and beyond this session. Before I end my session today, next slide, please. I also like to share with you some information about the upcoming Global Space and Technology Convention, which is based in Singapore, hosted in Singapore. It is Asia's premier and space technology event that brings together experts, researchers, innovators, and professionals all over the world. Last year, we had over 1,000 participants from over 42 countries, and we look forward to having you joining us as well. It's in February. You can remember it as the Valentine's Day, 14th. It's day 0 of the conference, crosses to basically the 16th of February. We have a CEO roundtable, we have networking, we have workshops showcasing knowledge platforms. And yeah, over almost a third of the participants were from the industry, were actually senior management representatives. So consider joining me in the beautiful and sunny Singapore for this flagship event. All right, and you can scan the QR code here too. Thank you very much, and I'll end the presentation here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for this. Yeah, you can stop sharing your screen. I will be sharing mine again. Very good. So, can you see my screen? You should be able to. We're going to be talking with 2 great people who joined us today. I'm very, very thankful they have joined us. Christian Patoureau, founder and CEO of Cacific, and Rob Desborough, general partner at Seraphim Space. We'll ask them very simple questions. First, don't hesitate again if you have questions to ask them, to post them in the chat, and I will be asking them myself directly. So maybe we'll start with Christian.
Yes, hello everybody.
Hi Christian. Yeah. Thank you. So you can choose either to answer in a French or in English. It's really up to you. I'll ask the question in English to make sure everyone can understand them. Can you tell us more about yourself first, maybe? So if anyone who doesn't know you here can learn about you, and why you chose Singapore for Cacific, of course.
Yeah. So I've been in this industry for almost 30 years now, 29 years to be precise. I'm originally an aerospace engineer. I worked in the satellite industry for about 10 years in Europe, in particular in Luxembourg. And after this, I came to Singapore about, well, actually 21 years ago, where the INSEAD Business School had just been opened. So I came here for the INSEAD MBA, and then I stayed on. It's been a great journey, and in particular, after 10 years of mainly consulting in the satellite industry in Asia for satellite operators, I decided to found Pacific. So it's a satellite operator. It took us quite a bit of time to get to where we are. It's been 10 years since I founded Pacific. The idea for Pacific is really to provide high speed, high quality, accessible internet to remote enterprise of the developing world. And so we have raised about $230 million for our first satellite, Pacific One. It was a Boeing-built satellite. It was launched in 2019. And it's been 4 years of operation. And now, why Singapore? Well, first I was here already, so that helped for sure. But beyond that, look, Singapore has a huge relevance for the markets that we wanted to cover. You know, places like Indonesia, Philippines, like Ronald just said, are, you know, a stone throw away, easy to fly there. Singapore is this gateway to all the markets that made sense for us in the heart of Southeast Asia, but also not
Sorry, Christian, I have to cut you here. Your internet seems to have some issues, and your camera is
covering as well, like Papua New Guinea, Island Pacific. So it was a good place to be. Okay.
Sorry, I think your internet is freezing a bit. So maybe you can remove the camera for now. It might be better.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Better?
So it cut out
Hello?
when you said we hear you very good. It cut out when you said that Philippines, Indonesia are stone's throw away.
Yeah. So those markets are relevant for us, of course, and they are easy to access from Singapore. Same for the Pacific that we cover as well, like Papua New Guinea. It's very easy to go there. But beyond that, I think it's also the regulatory framework of Singapore, the governance of Singapore that provides a great business-friendly boilerplate to build a business on. It's also, like Roger said, it's a safe place to attract talents. People here feel good to live here. It's a safe environment to harbor your family. And then beyond that, because of all those, aforementioned attributes, it's also a safe place for people to invest. Not a single time when I went to raise money from investors did they ever question putting their money in a company in Singapore.
Okay.
Great, stable geopolitical environment.
Okay, it cut again. Sorry, Christian.
Okay, I'm sorry about this.
It's okay. That's we heard the last bit, which was a great, stable political environment. I think that was the last part of your sentence.
That's right. Yes.
Okay, cool. That's great. That's a very nice answer. I can very much relate to what you said. I'll go to the next question. That's okay with you?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So how do you perceive the evolution of SpaceTech market until the end of the decade globally and in Singapore in particular? Because many countries speak about 2030, Agenda 2030 and other things like this. And I think space has a big part to play in it. So I'd like your opinion on the subject.
Yep. So look, I think generally, and the pandemic helped that, the governments and authorities around the world and companies understand that they need to connect, their remote provinces, their remote operation. There is no place for unconnected activities in the world. If you want to succeed, if you want to be efficient on the global scale, you need to connect your activities, your production centers, your government infrastructure. And I think that's really, the realization became really global through the pandemic. Now, because those remote areas are difficult to connect via terrestrial means. It's not easy to connect a plantation, a remote school, a rural clinic, a remote mining operation with fiber. Satellite is basically what drives this new desire to connect all the activity centers. So, I think that satellite will become more and more front and center. You see mega constellation coming to light, and that's just been happening in the last few years. Generally satellites, not only LEO constellation, but GEO like we do, are extremely relevant, each one for different type of application. Singapore, I think, has a great role to play, again, because of all the relevant attribute that I mentioned earlier. The one thing that is perhaps still lacking in the region is, the VC, a vibrant VC ecosystem that will really embrace and adopt new ideas, new projects, innovation, etc. Space is still generally in the region a scary investment destination. You basically need to go beyond the fact that it involves rockets, it involves remote operations, machines working alone in space. It is not something that is making investors particularly comfortable yet. And I think there's a journey that I'm sure Singapore and Austin can participate to make this environment more vibrant and really truly embrace their name of the the Silicon Valley of Asia.
That's great that you say that regarding VCs, because we're going to go on to questioning our second guest for today, which is Rob Desborough. I'll ask you the same question first. Can you tell us more? And then you will about you and about Seraphim, why you chose Singapore. And then you'll be able to answer to what Christian just said regarding investments. So can you tell us more about yourself, Rob, and why Seraphim, what is Seraphim doing in Singapore? Why you think Singapore is a good place to be?
Right. Well, thank you very much for having the opportunity to talk to you all today and talk through why we felt that Singapore was the optimal destination for our Asia activities. For those of you who aren't familiar with with Seraphim, we're the world's leading investment organization focused on the opportunity in space. We launched the world's first venture capital fund focused on space in 2016, the world's first accelerator focused on early stage space startups in 2018, and we launched the world's first listed fund focused on the opportunity in space in 2021. We are a $300 million AUM investment fund listed on the main market of the London Stock Exchange. We look to support companies from inception all the way through to IPO. So we can write checks of $250,000 at a pre-seed stage, and also $25 million to lead a Series C or Series D round. We've built a portfolio of over 100 companies globally across the space ecosystem. A third of our portfolio is in the US market, a third is in Europe, the rest of the world, and a third is in the UK. In terms of our global presence, we're headquartered in London, but we also have offices in San Francisco, and I'm delighted to say that we've also now launched in Singapore as well. I think overall now is an incredibly exciting time to be involved in space technology investment. It's one of the fastest growing areas for venture capital investment globally. When we first launched, about $1.5 billion was being invested into space startups globally. As of 2021, that hit 10 billion being invested. Clearly, there's been a bit of a turndown in 2022, and that dropped by about 25%, but that was still ahead of the global market, where we saw drops of about 35%. And I think there's two key drivers to that. It's global security and climate change. But the key one from us at Seraphim was also we're now seeing space investment is truly global. And if we look at the Asian market, we've seen a 69% year-on-year growth in terms of early stage space tech deals happening, which I think is really remarkable. It's the fastest growing area globally of space tech deals at the moment, which is why it was absolutely imperative for us to have a base in the market to support that deal flow, to identify new opportunities, and also to support our global portfolio, which as it grows and increasingly raises more capital, is looking to have a hub in the region. What really attracted us to Singapore was, I think, primarily ambition around space. And we've been speaking at the GSTC conference for several years now, and I highly recommend it. It's one of the best conferences for ultimately meeting all the key stakeholders in a very short period of time. And it's probably the highest profile conference within the region. So ambition was critical for us, and we're seeing that with Austin as well. I think confluence of deals and capital as well. As I touched on, we're seeing a very high number of deals now coming out of the Asian market. And there's a huge amount of capital now as well. Singapore is now very much a global destination for family offices. And we've identified about 200 venture capital funds who are interested in space tech just in Singapore alone. We've identified around 150 early stage opportunities across the whole region. India is probably number one at the moment, but closely followed by Singapore. But we're also seeing deal flow coming from Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, and Australia as well. But geographically, Singapore is the best destination from our perspective. I think you've got a very joined up ecosystem as well across the multiple agencies and corporations as well. There's a great talent base there. Our portfolio companies have been involved with the universities for a number of years now. And this is some of the biggest companies within our portfolio, companies like ISI and Spire as well. There's a great governance structure. As an English person, having a company, having a country where English is one of the primary languages is definitely advantageous from our perspective. And again, having that geographic position in the center of the Asia-Pac market is really important. We're also seeing this as very much a regional hub for some of the fastest growing space tech companies globally, who've often raised Series A or Series B financing rounds and are looking to expand their footprint into this market to support new market opportunities and customer development within that marketplace. Most of the primes as well, their Asian headquarters are based in Singapore, and these primes are often the end customers or investors into our portfolio companies. So I think there are many opportunities from our perspective there. Co-investment is a significant one as well, as we identify more family offices who are looking at long-term opportunities around space investment, and particularly with those strong drivers around ESG as well. So from our perspective, Singapore was the #1 destination in the region.
Thank you very much for all this information that was very well put together. And this is very funny because just a little bit before, wait, let me put my camera back on. Christian was saying that investors were maybe still a bit cold feet, I would say, towards the space industry. But listening to you, it really feels like, on the contrary, there is very much a lot of investment interest, at least on Seraphim's part. So I'd like to ask you the same question. How do you perceive, on the investor point of view, the evolution of the space tech market until the end of the decade, which is just 6 years from now already, and globally, and then in Singapore in particular?
So in terms of the space tech market, I think most of the big investment banks, whether it's Bank of America or Morgan Stanley or Goldman Sachs, believe that this is $1 trillion market that we are building towards by the end of the decade. A market that size gives very significant opportunity to the financial services sector for investors like us who are looking to take direct equity stakes in those businesses, or others who are looking to support build financial products to support the journey of the company, whether that's venture debt, or bonds, or listed opportunities as well. And I think most governments are now waking up to that opportunity and are looking to understand how they can get a slice of that economy, but also in an ever-changing world where global security is becoming increasingly important now, we're looking at our own national capabilities and national security. And that is why global security is one of the main drivers. So I think we will see increasing engagement from nations looking at sovereign capability. We're also seeing very much the evolution of the space tech investment landscape. When we launched our fund in 2016, we had to ask ourselves, what is the business of space right now? And we were very much focused on looking down at that point, and we recognized that satellites would be the tool, but data is the business. And those early investments we've made were very much into data companies, fully vertically integrated companies where they've built their own satellite constellation, but they were looking at how do they address multiple vertical markets terrestrially. Now, as that market evolves, so we've built that digital infrastructure in space, we're now increasingly seeing money going into how do we support the in-orbit economy, looking at space servicing, space sustainability. If we don't have a sustainable space environment, we can't benefit from space and what it can bring terrestrially. So we are starting to see more money going into that area. We're also seeing money starting to move into space as an industrial area, looking at space from a biotech perspective, a materials research perspective. I think in a few years' time, we'll probably see more money go into space as an infinite source of energy, looking at space-based solar power and other opportunities as well. So from my perspective, there's been a modest turn down, but I think space is growing at a very rapid pace. I think that's going to be driven by national interests, global security, and climate change. And at Seraphim, one of the things we've had to work really hard to do is, in the early days, bring new investors into the space sector. And last year, of those people who directly invested into space, 63% were brand new investors in space. Okay. We now have 13 of the world's 15 biggest venture capital funds have invested directly into space, and 9 of the world's 15 biggest PE funds have invested into space. This year saw 3 private equity funds acquire space tech companies, and in all cases, they did that at a premium to the market value of the company. And in this depressed market right now, private equity investors could essentially invest anywhere, but they've chosen space because of the long-term opportunity they see. And we're now starting to see real M&A opportunities coming out of the marketplace. So I am a space investor. I have to have conviction around this, but from my perspective, the numbers are starting to add up, and we're seeing real returns in the sector as well.
All right, that's good to hear. We have there's one more question that I want to ask, because we are approaching towards the end of the webinar. there was somebody who asked a question, and I think I'd like to prioritize this question over the one that I had. Somebody's asking, what are the skill sets that are needed in space tech, and what would you recommend a junior to study to work in space tech, space communication, rockets, or more data application?
So I think from my perspective, that the primary thing is a passion around space and how space can address some of our biggest challenges globally, from ubiquitous connectivity to climate change to global security. And as we see these companies grow, it's not just about engineers. These companies also need marketeers, they need business development people, sales people. You know, ultimately the success is not going to be driven just by the technology. It's going to be driven by that end market opportunity, the go-to-market strategy as well. So don't see space as just an area for engineers. I think it's an opportunity for all of us. And I think if anyone is thinking about doing a space startup, then from my perspective, the key thing is storytelling. As venture capitalists, we don't invest into science, we don't invest into technology. We invest into businesses that are looking to address a huge market opportunity, and make sure that your storytelling is addressing that big opportunity, not just talking about the science that's going to help you address it.
Okay, well, that's great, because that was going to be my question, where I would be asking, what would you recommend budding entrepreneur? So storytelling for this anonymous attendee. It didn't give the name, so I can't say who it was. So Christian, I'll ask you that question again. I was asking, what would you recommend for budding entrepreneur entering the space tech industry?
Right. So, well, I guess the space industry is a very complex industry, right? So it requires a lot of experience in many different fields. If you're an entrepreneur, you will need, like Rob says, you want to just need to understand the technology, but you need to understand the market, the regulatory environment, how to sell, how to monetize, how to package your product. It's a very complex and fully complete industry. And it touches many different disciplines and fields. So yeah, it's good to have a technical background for sure, but that's not where you stop it. You actually do need to understand how to finance. It's a capital-intensive industry. You absolutely need to understand, layered finance. It's often you can't stop at equity. You actually need to look at debt and structured debt and project finance. It's a very complex financing structure that you can sometimes arrive to. So, you see entrepreneurs in this field that are not necessarily young. I'm not young. I started at 45 years old, the Pacific business. And it's just because I felt that at that point I had touched so many different disciplines. I was an engineer, but also I had done product development, market analysis. I had done financing of projects, etc. But beyond that, like Rob says, you need to dream big, right? You need to be a disruptor. You can't stop at technology. I've seen beautiful, projects that were basically based on technology, and that's not enough, because it needs to be market driven. You need to understand your market front and center, and then you derive your technology from there. And you need to think about what is it that you're going to disrupt? How are you going to change the world with your business? You need to adapt your business plan so that you can really streamline your business to the market needs. You need, of course, in an industry like ours, to raise more capital than you actually think you need, because there's going to be so many things that you haven't thought about, let alone lawyers, for instance. The legal team that will need to structure your business is going to be very expensive. Also, what I would always recommend the entrepreneurs to share their ideas. Don't keep it for yourself. Don't try to bury your idea under, a layer of IP protection, etc. It's good to be protected, but at the same time, you need to share, you need to socialize your ideas so that, you know, it can bloom, it can resonate with other people, because sooner or later, it will no longer be your idea. It will be something you will need to grow with other people, with a team and a team of experts. And then a final note is pay attention to governance, pay attention to shareholder agreements. Make sure that this is something that helps you to grow the company and that doesn't become an impediment in the future.
Okay, that's a very good complete answer, I would say, especially for all the intricate parts that work together. We have another question from viewer Alban Medici, who's asked, what is the space industry last roadblock for mass adoption? And what would be your company's stage and vision in 5 years? So either Rob or Christian.
I can continue a little bit then on what I just built. So I would just what I would say is that the roadblock that we observe right now is the adoption of like interplanetary exploitation of new business plan in space. What you see today is essentially observation and telecom or broadcast. Those are the bread and butter of the industry. The rest, if you really look at the actual size, it's not counted in hundreds of billions of dollars. It's counted of billions of dollars, like lunar exploration, asteroid mining, and so on. These are great ideas, but still the capital that is required to get there and actually to develop that market are humongous. It is very difficult to actually embrace that. So it's going to be one step at a time, going to the moon and exploit the moon, going to Mars and exploit Mars, either for tourists or other application. It's going to remain small until finally you have a built-up adoption, but it's not going to happen overnight. You're going to need to have pioneers. You're going to need to have some people who are going to lose money, so then other people can make money on these markets. Right now, bread and butter remains observation and telecom.
Okay. What about you, Rob? Do you have a comment for that last question?
I think for me, at a higher level, it's education. And I think we need to make sure, and all the agencies need to make sure that we're bringing to life what the business of space is today. And I think we can get distracted by looking at the in-orbit economy, beyond Earth opportunities. I think it's really important that we evidence how space is already, driving economies, driving our lives today. And that will ultimately bring to life a financing opportunity as well. I think I always struggle that every time when I'm interviewed by news organizations, that my first question is typically, so space, Rob, it's all about billionaires, rocket ships and tourism. And we have to sort of rein that in and explain about what space is doing today. And I think that will help get more public engagement and also ultimately drive capital providers into this market, which helps us all.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. We're just on time, about 2 minutes. So I'd like to thank everyone for coming today. Our speakers, Rob, Ronald, and Christian. Thank you also, Clive, for your support. As a reminder for Ronald, they have an event in February. Can you repeat the name for the event you have in February?
It's the Global Space and Technology Convention, GSTC.
Okay, that's right. And for the French Chamber of Commerce, we have a number of events during the year. We'll see Christian at Broadcast Asia most likely next year. I mean, Satellite Asia. The French Chamber will have a pavilion on Broadcast and Communicasia. And February, like I say, we're trying to prepare a delegation for the Singapore Air Show for French companies. Merci à tous, merci aux intervenants, merci aux participants, Ronald, Christian et Rob. Nous avons plusieurs trade shows l'an prochain avec la Chambre de commerce. Il y a la JSTC dont Ronald a parlé un instant en février et le Singapour Air Show également en février, où la Chambre de commerce est en train de préparer une délégation. Merci à tous. Ce webinaire sera rediffusé, bien entendu, et je vous dis à très bientôt pour un autre webinaire.